Hello, it's Susie Walker here with the wonderful Ruby Wax. Hurrah! We have Ruby Wax, comedian, author, TV writer, founder of Frazzled Cafés. That's what we're going to be talking about today, mental health and frazzled cafes and how it's okay to be okay. Ruby, tell me about Frazzled Cafés. What on earth are Frazzled Cafés?
It's okay not to be okay. See,
yes.
You said it's okay to be okay. That's not as interesting as it's okay to not be okay.
It's okay to be not okay. That's exactly what I meant. It's Friday night. I'm not okay, Ruby.
No, it's a good definition of frazzled. So
yeah, I am a little bit frazzled. Yeah. Okay. Tell me about your Frazzled Cafes. Why have you been inspired to create them? Tell me the story about why you did that.
Story of Frazzled. Well, way back, I did a show about mental illness many years back because a comic relief outed me. They put a poster of me outside the tube stations and all the way down the escalator. And it said on it, 1 in 4 people have mental illness. 1 in 5 people have dandruff. I have both. And they didn't ask me. So when I saw those, I thought, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to write a show about mental illness and say that's my publicity poster. And I wrote a show and I did it and it kind of took off. And first I just did it in mental institutions. They liked it. And then it went on the road. And in the second half, the audience would talk back to me and they would say what was going on with them. And that really took off and you could see people wanted to speak and they wanted to be heard. And sometimes there were thousands of people, but they didn't mind because nobody ever cares about anybody in public. So I thought someday I would like to have little meeting places where I could have that kind of communication where we're instant friends and where there's no bullshit. You just talk human to human, not cocktail party, where you have to ask how people's kids are and you don't give a shit. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. It's too late. I've already said it. Anyway, so I wanted a place like that. And I was doing a talk at Marks and Spencer's because I do talks about stress and what to do about stress in my books.
Yeah.
And I said, my dream is to have a little place where I could be myself and I'd meet my tribe and we'd meet every few weeks, sort of like AA. And I said, I'm going to get in touch with Starbucks because they have a cafe. And they said, no, use us.
Amazing.
So we've been going for about 3 years up and down the country, the UK, where people would meet. And some of them have met regularly for 3 years. And then because of this, I now do it on Zoom. And I do sometimes 2 a day, and there's 100 people each. And it's really intimate. And people, it's such a relief because you think, oh, there's other people who feel the way I do. And they connect, even in their isolation, the way we were always supposed to connect. And it's different ages, different, sexuality, different ethnicity. And you can really see that if we listen to each other, then we really are a community. And I hope that stays long after this is over.
What are people talking about? We talk about mental health, but what are the issues that people talk? Because you're creating a kind of a safe place for people to talk. What are they talking about? What's worrying everyone?
Listen, everybody's a different fingerprint, except we have the same themes. People with their kids screaming and they're trying to do work are crawling up the walls. People who are alone also are crawling up the walls. And just to hear that whatever you envy, that person also has their struggle. And some people kind of like the isolation, but then they feel guilty. And you really watch the human condition. Everybody wants what the next guy has, but we still understand each other deep down, which is that we lived a life before that was busy, but we don't know what we were busy with. And so now we're stopped in our tracks. And so a lot of us in the beginning, I hoovered over and over again. I'd hoover, same spot. Once I was trying to get a yellow spot out and it turned out it was the sunlight. Half an hour on that one. And also didn't know what certain products were. So I ended up using not my thing's coming out. Can I still hear you?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Ah, great.
So I was using fabric softener to clean my but it's to fill in because our lives were like one thing after another. And now suddenly nobody knows what their meaning is, which is a really existential crisis. So you can use this time to evolve or to find your people or to go nuts. I mean, it really is a much bigger pandemic than anybody thinks. And please let's not say mental illness, because this condition of being frazzled, which means literally being stressed about stress, so that it's your own thoughts that are making you crazy, not actually what's out there. And we all live now in a state of frazzle. And so it's a pleasure to hear everybody. What?
I mean, at Psychologies, we like to talk about mental health and building mental health and what that is. So I think what you're doing is you're creating a really safe space for people to be real, because in this world, we've got the Instagram world and all these fake worlds around us. And there you've got right in the middle, a safe place for people to be honest about how they're really feeling, which is a really, really special thing.
I mean, it's like, I guess that's what religion was for before, where people would feel, oh, this is my community. And it's so, they thank me. Well, I'm thanking them. What do you think it makes me feel like to hear somebody being so honest? And then you go back in the world and people say, how are you? And you go, fine, I'm fine. It's not that they're complaining. It's just that they're being real. And I think we were missing that ingredient.
Yeah. I mean, you have taken the Mindfulness Cognitive Behavioral Therapy degree over at Oxford, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
How much has that inspired this idea? I mean, mindfulness is about kind of observing thoughts, about creating almost space in your own head.
Yeah.
And you're creating it in this. So tell us a little bit about your degree and what you learned about that.
Well, I got a degree in psychotherapy, but I knew there must be another way that we could manage this mothership ourselves. You know what I mean? Rather than always throwing it in somebody's lap and screaming, fix me.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I studied psychotherapy mostly because I wanted to know who was ripping me off. But, I know what a good therapist is. Mindfulness is, you are the therapist in a way. Is that what the therapist does is kind of, have a container so that whatever crap you throw at them, they're very accepting. And you realize you're not as awful as you thought in a way. And you eventually learn to forgive yourself, because where did we go wrong? I mean, we didn't kill anybody. How come we're so mean to ourselves? So with mindfulness, you become the observer in a way. And there's exercises where you learn to kind of A, accept yourself, and B, be able to tolerate the hell that goes on in the human mind. And my book, How to Be Human, where I explained a lot of this negative thinking originally was so we'd survive. I mean, the whole book is about what evolution gave us that really worked back then, but is backfiring now because our little brains can't deal with the 21st century. Part of them is still very primitive. They don't know the wallpaper's changed. So we have to be nice to ourselves, A, but understand how this works. And then be able to, like it's a wild animal, lasso it in a little bit and pull it when it gets too excited. Because when we get scared, and we're mostly scared in this world, we can't think straight. And so mindfulness was a way of, and it's not for everybody, but if you look at the empirical evidence in research, which I love the science of it, it does actually lower the cortisol, so that you can return to yourself more in a calm space rather than all this churning going on. Like, why didn't he call me back? He didn't call me back because of this. That's us layering, It's okay if we're stressed, but it's the endless storytelling that makes us even more stressed. And for me, I haven't had depression in 12 years. It was good for depression.
Wow, that's amazing. So you haven't had depression in 12 years?
No, I'm on medication, let me say, but if medication worked, I would never have had a relapse. And of course, all of us have most of us have relapses. But to me, it's like going to the gym. That mindfulness is like lifting a barbell. And also because I studied it, I know that it develops a part of the brain that really does help you focus. And if you do have a amygdala hijack, if you do, you can bring it down faster. That doesn't mean you lose your personality. It just means you're more available.
Sure. I mean, as you said, the amygdala hijack, it's that kind of the fear response. And as you say, it's not saber-toothed tigers anymore. It is, your boss.
It's like somebody didn't answer my email in 3.2 milligrams of a second. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you trigger it, then you're off. So so for people listening to this now, let's do a little bit of an introduction. What would be a great tool? So you're triggered, you can feel it, your heart is racing. What can we do to kind of do the prefrontal lobe, the mindful approach? What can we do to kind of...
Let me just say, we were living in a world where everybody wants top tips, okay?
Yeah.
We've got a zillion cells in us. There is no top tip. Everything you do, like from learning tennis, from learning math to learning a language, you have to repeat something because a muscle is being developed. So there's no top tip, nor is there for yoga, nor is there for running, a marathon. But the idea, and by the way, Frazzled Cafes, I begin and I end them, the ones I run myself, which is the ones that are going now on Zoom, is I begin with mindfulness and end with mindfulness. The rest has a structure. If you want to do it, you do it. But it's the only way I know to calm the room down. So when you notice you're gabbling up here, which we're always doing, and people think you're supposed to blank your mind, it is never blank. If it is, you're dead. So that's a clue. So all this is going on. But when you pull your focus to a sense, a bodily sense, those aren't intangible. It's sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. When you focus on a sense, the amygdala immediately, the gabbling calms down. And this other part of your brain, far away from the amygdala, called the insula, activates. So you can't be gabbling and sensing at the same time. It's two different parts of your brain. It's like being in a car. You can't be in two gears at once. But that doesn't mean now I'm in a state of nothingness and I'm just present. The thoughts will come. They'll grab you, which they're supposed to do. You notice them, and then without going, you're an idiot, you did this wrong, you just pull them back to the sense. So let's say we're listening to sound, okay? So listen. Just listen. Now, as you're listening, you're probably in the present because you can't listen tomorrow or yesterday. But then the thoughts come like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm doing it wrong. You notice them, and then without being hard on yourself, the exercise is take it back to listening. And it'll go back and forth. And each time you do it, that insula gets buffer like a muscle so that it becomes easier and easier to, when the storms come in, you know where you pull it down like an anchor, but the thoughts are still there. It's just that they don't have so much sting.
Yeah.
And they're more like a CD playing in the background, like, oh yeah, that CD number 47 that always tells me I'm an idiot. And the exercise, even if you do a few minutes a day and you don't have to do it sitting, the insula gets stronger. And that's...
You're building neural pathways, aren't you? You're literally building...
Yeah. You're retraining your brain. Yeah, you're breaking old habits and you're creating new ones, but you can only do that when you're not terrified and you're aware of what you're doing. Once you're aware of the cigarette going in and what goes on, if you're minute by millisecond aware, eventually you can put it down. But if you're terrified, you'll smoke more.
Yeah, so it's about being aware maybe of your state, noticing. So mindfulness really helps in noticing the state of fear. So
and then you can watch it. So there is fear, but I'm not fearful. There is depression, but I'm not depressed. And and that objectivity is what strengthens that part of the brain. But it's hard. It's hard, like who wants to go to the gym every day? But if a six-pack is worth it to you, being able to anchor my brain is worth it to me.
So, with that analogy at the gym, I don't know, I've never had a six-pack, but maybe it takes 3 months to get a six-pack. What's the, in terms of, for people say, okay, I'm so inspired by Ruby Wax today, I'm going to sign up for her Frazzled Café online.
No, Frazzled Café won't teach you mindfulness. I just take them.
No. That's one of the things that they can do. But also, I'm going to be so inspired to learn about mindfulness. From starting a practice now, how long does it take before you start kind of being able to come back to center? Is it different for everyone, or is there is it a 12-week program? Is it?
You go on. I'm not all about mindfulness because some people don't like it, but I wrote a book called The Mindfulness Guide for the Frazzled and Mindfulness Guide for the Frazzled, where I took what my professor, who was one of the inventors of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy at Oxford, and he let me take how he teaches and then turn it into comedy. But still, it's the real, you know what I mean? It's from the horse's mouth. And I also make it so that you can do it when you're walking, when you're exercising, when you're eating, when you're stroking your cat. Mindfulness isn't a kind of precious thing you have to do. It's just a way of training your brain. And your brain goes with you wherever you go, so you don't need to go to a gym. So if you're standing in a queue and just for a minute, you don't do sit-ups all day, you notice your thoughts. You bring it back to maybe the feel of your feet on the ground, because that's a sense. Then the thoughts go, bring it back to the feet. Thoughts go, bring it back. You're just standing in a queue, nothing else is going on. You might as well do it. Or when you're drinking coffee, you taste the coffee, the thoughts go, bring it back to the taste, thoughts go, bring it back. So it's really, the discipline is that you have to do it every day, just like the gym.
But in a way, it's better than the gym, because, as you say, you can do it all the time. And you're washing up, it's Thich Nhat Hanh, isn't it? It's the whole thing of when you're, one of the
dishwashing.
mindful, when you're washing the dishes, notice your thoughts while you notice what you're doing. And that's what's so clever about mindfulness. I think it doesn't need to be done on a cushion for 20 minutes every day. You can do it
so hard. It's like Iron Man for the brain. It's really, really hard, even though it's the simplest thing on earth. But if you wanted to learn, I think Richard Davidson, who does the brain scanning and mindfulness, says after about 8 weeks, you would start to see a neurological change.
8 weeks.
Yeah. And then, it is like working out. It'll give or take, but there is neurological change after that. So.
That's amazing. And so in terms of the Frazzled Cafes, when you're working with people, because as you say, that's not mindfulness, that's just creating a kind of compassionate space. What benefits do you see for people? What happens to people once they start coming regularly? What happens to their psyche? Do they come from frazzled to non-frazzled?
What's so interesting is I do have regulars, and I feel like they're my best friends now. And they're young, and they're older, and they're rich, and you can see the change. They actually say, I come to this because this is why I get dressed in the morning. It's a lifeline where they cannot feel so alone. And I can hear, and we're all roller coasters. That's what's so refreshing, is like one person will say, it's hideous today. And then the next day they say, oh, I'm more lifted. But what they are getting, I think, and this might be a little bit of touch of mindfulness, is they are starting to notice their patterns rather than be in their patterns. And that's really healthy, to say, I've started to see that these are just thoughts. This isn't actually things nothing's changed. I'm still in the room. But the thought, and if you don't believe them or don't grab them, then they pass. So there are a lot of people on that site. And then they break up in smaller groups and discuss it. So we're also in small groups. They do lighten up. And it makes you cry, because they say, listen, thank you. This is the great time of my day, because I can hear people from sometimes all over the world saying the same thing I feel. And when we get off and we do the final mindfulness, you kind of feel, okay, I've just connected to the way I should have always felt in my life.
Yeah. So
we're going to have small groups too. So also to emulate what they originally were. So if you go on frazzledcafe.org, we can put you in small groups wherever you are.
So there's a big group, and then everyone goes. And do you discuss things, Ruby? What do you discuss?
We don't. I open it up. It's like a little bit like AA or somebody else does. They speak for, let's say, 2 minutes, and I say, it's not therapy. We don't go, here's what I would do for you, because we're different fingerprints. What works for me doesn't work. We don't discuss the news, because we can watch that, but it's speaking from the heart, human to human, and they get that. So one person will start, and then for the next 15 minutes, people can come in and say, oh yeah, that's what I thought. I couldn't go out either, and I got really scared, so I didn't know whether to go out or whether to go. And then they start, it's like a little bit of a ball starts rolling. And then after that, we break them out into groups, and that's where the bonding happens. And you just see people going, oh, I want my group again, or we were laughing, or it was so great because somebody said, they felt the way I did. It's just, it's great. They love their group. Then they come back, more discussion, and then I end it with a mindfulness. And then it's the whole package. You just have to let people talk, and everybody's leaning forward, listening. And that's when we flourish as a human race. That's us at our best.
Well, I think that you're right. It's that piece about connection, isn't it? About connecting to our mindfulness is about connecting with yourself, and in a group, it's about connecting to other human beings. They're with humanity. So, in terms of,
but they have to be not scared. When humans are scared, we turn against each other, and we become us and them, and we start to look for an enemy. When the mask starts to drop, everybody looks like you. in a way, and the mindfulness really isn't about being self-indulgent. It's about, I'm cooling the engines, because then I can really hear you. I can imagine what your life is like. I mean, conflict resolution. It's
Yeah.
That's the way to go. Is you get rid of your red flag, and then I can hear about you. And we pass this vibe like neural Wi-Fi, So if I'm angry, you're gonna get it, And now when everybody's
Well,
cool,
honestly, it makes, when you're talking, I actually want to cry, because it's that thing about connection, isn't it? It's that thing. It's that beautiful connection that happens when you. I can see you're kind of coming from. We were trying to get on, weren't we, onto this call, and there were a few tech problems, and I was a little bit blotchy and adrenalized, and then as you're talking, I could just feel my shoulders going down, because you're talking about connection and real connection, and I'm like, and so people listening to that, I'm sure will start feeling the same. Do you think it will matter?
That's what's good with mothers and kids, or fathers, is you pass your state. People say, what do I say to my kid? Well, just be it. I wish I knew this when my kids were growing up, but I didn't.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to be massive? Because what's happening is we're all going virtual, aren't we? We're creating these communities and these connected. Does it matter, do you think, that it's face to face? Can we do this virtually? Because I know you're running Frazzled Cafes virtually now, but does it matter that it's not face to face?
We complained about tech before, and I thought that we had to be skin to skin to pass that oxytocin, because that's how we bond. Almost like we'd set, there'd be a scent of it, because mothers pass it to their babies, and that's how that. And I thought you'd have to be skin to skin. Well, come along, these Zoom meetings, and I've never felt more connected, because you can look people in the eye. Now they're really listening because they got nothing else to do. Nobody's going, hey, come on, I've got to get on. I got to check my feeds, my Twitter feeds. Everybody's present. So how ironic it is that the very thing we thought was the enemy, it's what's pulling us together. Yeah. But the whole world is topsy-turvy. I mean, that is the conversation. It's the people with prior mental health issues that can deal with this isolation, because we were always locked in. And we know, but it's the people who thought they were on top of the world can't deal with uncertainty. And that's the only thing we're certain about, is there is uncertainty. But that wasn't your question. I went off piece a little bit.
But no, but it feels like that frazzle is our superpower, because now in these turbulent times, this is what we can, we're used to the frazzle, we're used to the uncertainty. We know how to deal with that. So coming, and as you say, the people who are perhaps more straightforward, not as frazzled, they don't know how to cope in this upside world.
How to do that. But what a lesson. And if we listen to that, then they would go out and understand the most important thing is bonding, connecting, way more than like hoarding it, because we know that however much money you have, if you're alone, you might as well be dead. And do you mind me just saying, I wrote a new book, which comes out in September.
New book coming out in September. I heard about this. So tell them about your new book. I'm so excited to read this one. This is good. Tell them.
Well, my new book is called, and I wrote it in the last 2 years. It's called, And Now for the Good News, To the Future with Love. And for the last 2 years, I wanted to, there was so much, you get addicted. This is, again, the human condition, to bad news, because it gives you a hit of adrenaline. Except ultimately you get the amygdala burnout and goodbye to your immune system. But I understand the kick of bad news. But, there were bestsellers. The news just flourishes on bad news. So I decided for 2 years, I'd take my attention to see where there were really, not positive, but where people were redefining humanity in a way. Where were the green shoots and people reinventing education and reinventing business, and shiny green shoots, but if we focus on them, they would flourish.
Yeah.
I traveled around the world, and I went to find new ways of creating communities in cities and in the country, new education, new models. So in Finland, and then business is really interesting. I thought, oh, well, business, it isn't. I went to work at Patagonia, the sportswear company.
Yeah.
They've been going for 40 years. Their logo is, please don't buy any more of our clothes. Whenever they wear out, they say, send them back and we'll fix them. most of the employees work, they have their projects all around the world, they're environmentally friendly beyond your wildest dreams. They give 10% back to, and they support anyway. There's a lot of businesses now, including inside Unilever, that are building this model on fairness, transparency, sexual equality, environmentally friendly. But there's a company called B Corp. They give you rigid requirements, and only if you pass every one of them, they give you the stamp, and that stamp will indicate which companies are the real thing. And I think that'll influence, certainly the millennials will want to shop there, because nobody wants any more crap. And so this is beginning. And also in tech, there were things coming up that were not dissimilar to Zoom, but I was writing about them. And then new ways of training kids, like not to be so, struggling for a job that probably won't exist when they get older, but how to work as a team. The smarter one flourishes when they bring up the kid that wasn't that smart, and they give rewards to kids that think out of the box. Thank you. I would have done much better. And a whole new way of education. So it's been really exciting, because I wanted to change my life a little bit after finishing the book. And then this happened. But knowing that some of those things are still there, there's certain communities I want to rent a place in. There's certain, not charities, but kind of young people I met who are really hands-on, grassroots, doing interesting things with refugees. None of these big companies where you throw money at it, but they're there, right in the streets doing things. I want to join them. It's like I got the ultimate Michelin guide for a meaning in life, and I want to follow my own book when I'm out of here.
Yeah, totally. What we're doing at Psychologies, we've just created some awards for kind companies, because we want to put our money where our mouth is. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be putting money after all these people are ripping people up, who are bullies, all of that. No, enough. We want to champion and support those companies that are doing brilliant things. Be kind. For me, it's the most important thing in the world is that kindness and connection, which you're talking about. It really.
I totally agree with you. That's good. I hope they get rewarded and no longer the company that screws their stockholders, or you know what I mean. The people in the company will own it, rather than working for some people that just invested in it. But that's already changing. I went and met the guy who wrote, how good is this title? Firms of Endearment.
Oh, brilliant. Yes.
So I met him, and then Conscious Capitalism. So there's a whole community. Ben and Jerry's in it, Dove is in it, big companies that make a lot of cash, but their policy is now about fairness.
Yeah.
It's all about community and kindness. That's what it comes down to.
And
make money.
I think what's happening with this big pause, the grand pause, whatever it's been called, is that we're coming out of it. And we, as you say, however much money you've got, however famous you are, all of that thing, you realize what's really important. It is connection. And without connection and kindness and looking after each other, I'm currently living in a canal boat. And I am. And, we've all been looking after each other. They knock and they bring, when the toilet rolls went, they came and brought me toilet rolls. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing.
That is a community, isn't it? The houseboat thing.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But, it's everywhere. You're seeing it. You're seeing this. And I think it's not some fake Instagram nonsense. It's real. Because I think people realize, oh my goodness, if I don't look after other people, I could be, left all by myself with no one to help me. I think it's a survival thing as well right now, but it's put it really into focus about what's incredibly important.
Yeah, I hope we dump the the figures we had of how important fame would be to them, or influence. What the hell? Show you as an influencer, somebody who looks really like present and there. We don't have many people with the voice, that says, with the wisdom. Where's the philosophers? That isn't an egomaniac, because it's not in politics, but it would be nice to have some wisdom thrown at us once in a while, rather than just rhetoric.
But I think, Ruby, just like you're looking at in the companies, I think that's happening. The wisdom is coming through, and it's just about where we put our focus. It's just like the mindfulness piece, isn't it? It's like your book. I can't wait to read it because you're putting the focus on what is happening rather than the negative, cynical.
Yeah. Because that's much easier to write about. Yeah.
I know we do that at Psychology all the time. We're putting our focus on the wise people and giving them a voice. You know, on the back page, we've got a Buddhist nun. Do you know what I mean? You know, Pema Chodron talking about stuff that's really important. Yeah. You know, this is what is important. So I think if we all combine, you know, you and Psychologies and B Corps and all of these people, we combine and collaborate and connect together, then we change the world. Then we create a new world together. Yeah, brilliant.
Well, we have to meet them on the houseboat.
Yeah. Well, come.
I think it is about finding similar voices. It's just we got distracted. You know what I mean? You wanted, oh, there was some more on the buffet. Oh, there's some more. Meanwhile, the person that touches your heart, who's sitting right in front of you on Zoom, was the food you were always looking for. That's my lesson. All these WhatsApps, fancy WhatsApp that I could join, and I'd be on, and they only want to talk about the disease because it's so exciting. And then suddenly I look at a stranger in the eye and think, I wish we lived together, you know, or there's so much more food. You don't have to have people that you think are powerful. It's never going to feel like you're full. But
it is at Ruby, but it is about voices and it is about leadership. And it's about, so it's not about, as you say, that power and ego have been too kind of intertwined. We need to, so for me with the platform at Psychologies is how can I give a platform to all of these wise voices and let them become this choir and let's create, you know, this big, you know, symphony together. You know, that's what we want to do. But, you know, you've got a platform, we've got a platform, B Corps got a platform. Let's bring them all together so they can't ignore us anymore. It's not about they and ours. It's not about that, is it? It's about working together. That's what we need to do.
But I hope that it'll come from bottom up because we had the leader thing. Let's dump it. I mean, I don't even have a chapter on politics. And I don't even want to talk about it because to me, the more we mention certain names, the more it rains down that toxicity. And sadly, we like to be scared as human beings. So we choose these leaders so that, you know, it's like we don't know that they're scared. I remember seeing a mother beating her child on the train when I was younger once, and then the kid was crying. So it turned around and went to the mother to console it. And you thought, wait a minute, she's the one who beat you. So in a way, it's that evil daddy thing, you know, like there's Mr. T at the helm, and then we turn around and go save us. But you're the one that created the horror. And again, the last book is It's Not Your Condition, It's the Human Condition. Forgive yourself. We have glitches. You know, we aren't homo perfectus. So it's sort of saying that's how humans work. You know, we have a higher brain and we have a down and dirty brain, and the two will, you know, are in conflict, but we have to make peace inside here rather than say, oh, it's their fault or it's their fault. As long as we're pointing the finger, we're not going to get anywhere. Well, I would love to get together.
Yeah. Well, come on my houseboat and empty the toilet for me. That's the only thing, Ruby, is you've got to empty your own toilet. It's not nice in the houseboat. Apart from that,
I'll bring in incontinent pants and just sit there, and then I'll change.
Great. But I think, you know, what you're saying, just to finish, you know, where we started was this kind of going from fear to, you know, to being mindful and judging. And it's almost, if we can be mindful, all of us, if we make a decision that's what we're going to practice that place of, and then connecting. That's where we're creating these spaces, whether it's a Frazzled Café or with your friends or on Zoom. I think that is where the magic, the alchemy happens in those spaces, when we're not scared, when we're coming from our wisest place, and then connecting together, collaborating together to make quiet, gentle changes in the world that we all want. Yeah.
And to show vulnerability, to say, you know what, I don't know.
Yeah.
The only thing you can depend on is uncertainty. And what's so touching is now people are going, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, if that isn't adorable, you know, I like people for their flaws. If you're, you know, showing me a fluffy bunny, I'm out of here. You know, I love people for the rough edges, and maybe we could keep showing it to each other.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's lovely, Ruby. Ruby, thank
Oh,
you.
thank
Really, what a lovely end to Mental Health Week for us. That's really beautiful. You're amazing, and come and have a cup of tea on my boat. But
I will.
that would be really lovely.
Yeah, thank you so
Ruby,
much.
lots of love. The Frazzled Café, all the details of Ruby's new venture, the Frazzled Café, on Zoom. Join her, sign up, let's support that. That's going to be one thing we can do. And I can't wait to read your new book
Thank you.
in the autumn. Lots of love, darling. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.